Hi, folks. I hope you guys are doing well. It feels like it's been an eternity, but it really hasn't. I just got done with the weekly overview earlier in the week and the remaining Taurus new moon videos for all the rising signs for the membership part of the channel. I had mentioned in the weekly overview that I wanted to talk about the Pluto retrograde, this Pluto retrograde that we've got starting on the 4th in 2 days' time. And then, of course, after that, we're going to be ready for next week's weekly overview, etc., etc., etc. And starting next week, we're going to start working on towards that Scorpio full moon as well, which is kind of electric insofar as that the moon is opposite Uranus. So that should be I mentioned when I did the weekly overview that it would be far from inactive, and I think that's probably true for most of us as this week continues to unfold. But next week things should kind of ratchet up even more in some respects. But more to follow on that. The first thing I want to say about Pluto retrograde is what I say about all retrograde transits, which is if you have Pluto retrograde in your birth chart, you might feel Pluto's transformative effect more directly and clearly when Pluto is retrograde in the skies. And Pluto is going to be retrograde from May the 4th to October the 14th. May the 4th to October the 14th. Pluto, and some of this I've already mentioned to you before, but let me just recap this. Pluto, wherever he transits, in my experience, tries to transform that house, and in this case, it would be the house occupied by Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius in your chart, tries to transform that house slowly, thoroughly, pretty unmistakably for your best interests. And when Pluto, and for context, if you're like, well, what does that mean? Between 2008 and 2024, Pluto went over the house occupied by the sign of Capricorn in your chart. So you can, if you know your chart, and many of you do, take a look at the house occupied by Capricorn in your chart. I use the whole signs house system. You can use whatever you like and see if that resonates for you. Since 2008 to 2024, how was that house transformed? What did Pluto try to transform? And I think from, if I'm not mistaken, 1995 to 2008, gosh, it feels like it would be longer than that. That feels awfully short for Pluto. I'm going to do some research on that. Pluto, I think, was going over the Sagittarius part of the chart. I need to look at that. Irrespective, Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for a long time, all the way to 2042, and will seek to transform this part, the Aquarius house. Now, when Pluto enters a house, and Pluto dipped into Aquarius in 23 and 24, spent a lot of 24 there in Aquarius. But when Pluto enters a house, and I would give this still 2027, Pluto seeks first to untie and loosen and end the situations that are holding us back from this transformation. So if Pluto is going over your 6th house, Pluto may try to loosen your ties to a job, to some form of employment, to something to do with your health, so that over time then it can move you in a direction that is move your day-to-day routine and where you're spending your days and your time more in a direction that is in alignment to you and to what is right for you. So just kind of, that's, and for the first 3-4 years, Pluto is first seeking to clear the space and make the endings. And in Pluto's case, you know, with the outer planets, very often we are dealing with our own attachments and our own inertia and our own fear of transformation. So sometimes Pluto's transformations can be a little bit, it's all dependent on how hard we are holding on to something that Pluto has determined is not right for us. And we may well instinctively be aware that whatever it is that we're holding on to is not right for us. But we often do, you know. If Pluto's going over your fourth, you might be really attached to a home or a place or a residence or something to do with your homeland. And if Pluto feels like, no, you need to be making your home somewhere else or in some sort of other situation, it can start to give you, it's not just about strong messages, it can really seek to loosen that grip in a very powerful way. And that can be hard depending on your attachment. Similarly with jobs and job changes, if they're going to be significant, if an entire way of life is going to be changed when Pluto's going over the sixth, then letting go of that can be hard. And themes of power struggles and, you know, if we're on a path that is not aligned, then tensions and challenges and power struggles and all, you know, will appear. First and foremost, we may be involved in something that is not right for us to begin with. So we are unlikely to show up in a passionate, committed, we may show up in a committed manner, hardworking manner, holding on to things and trying to hold on to things and make them work. But it's unlikely that we're showing up at our absolute, authentic best where we shine. And, you know, it takes a certain amount of time and growth and maturity to start to recognize those symptoms in ourselves. So sometimes these first few years of transformation can be dramatic in terms of Pluto loosening those bonds. Now, Pluto moves painstakingly through a house. So there's a lot of moving forward, then moving back, then moving forward, then moving back, then moving forward, but then moving back, year after year after year. And that is what Pluto is going to be doing. So in some ways, you know, Pluto is within those first 4 or 5 degrees of Aquarius. If you start to track the degrees, you're likely to go a little bit crazy because where is it retrograding? How far is it going? When it first was direct last year and when Pluto first entered for a longer time, did it make it to those degrees or not? It's just think of it as treading ground. However, and this is why I wanted to do this video, because I could very casually have just said in the weekly overview, Pluto is going retrograde, and if you have Pluto retrograde in your birth chart, you may feel the transformational effects more then, and this is how Pluto works, and we would have been done. But what is striking about this Pluto in Aquarius, when Pluto entered Aquarius in 2024, and many of you have heard me say this before, the Sun and Pluto conjuncted at Capricorn the day before, or for some people, the day of both Pluto and the Sun moving into Aquarius. So they conjuncted in Capricorn, and then the Sun moved ahead, and Pluto came into Aquarius. But then on March the 5th of last year, Mercury conjuncted Pluto, and then February the 5th, Mercury conjuncted Pluto, and then February the 14th of last year, Mars conjuncted Pluto, and February the 17th, Venus conjuncted Pluto. And between Jan 20th and Feb 20th, it really felt as though Pluto had made a rather dramatic entry into the sign of Aquarius and kind of made it, kick the door open, so to speak, and made it clear what ties it was working to loosen and what the foundation of the transformation he was going to create was going to be. So you can go back to Jan 20th to Feb 20th and see what happened then and see how Pluto started to operate in the Aquarius part of your chart at that time, considering the personal, not only did Pluto enter Aquarius, but the personal planets, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars met up with Pluto just after his entry into Aquarius. And Pluto spent a lot of 2024 in Aquarius. Now, the most dramatic of these aspects, sorry, that's my cat using the litter box. I think he's figured out that he's a sweet, sweet fellow, and he likes a certain amount of privacy when he uses the litter box. Not that, you know, the litter box is in the other bathroom, so he has plenty of privacy when he wants to use it typically. But he figures that I'm busy doing my video, so he can go use the litter box. Anyway, it seems to happen a lot when I'm doing these videos. It's just kind of funny. And then he tends to announce that he has used the litter box, so that may happen too. I'm just warning you. So it's the Mars-Pluto aspects, in my experience, that tend to really, gosh, a goldfinch, just, it must be a goldfinch, I don't know what it is, a very beautiful yellow bird, just kind of perched on this tangerine, this calamansi tree. It's not a tangerine, you're just outside my window. Yeah, I think it is a goldfinch. Gorgeous. Mango colored. I mean, deep, deep turmeric colored almost. Okay. Mars conjuncted Pluto on February 14th of 2024. And it's the Mars squares and oppositions that tend to make clear what these transformations are really about. Mars-Pluto aspects can be read loud and clear in a way that Mercury and Venus tend to be a little bit softer. And what is interesting to me about this particular retrograde is that it happens about a week after Mars opposed Pluto for the third time. Now, most of you would know that Mars was retrograde recently, and Mars opposed Pluto 3 times as part of his retrograde. A lot of Mars's transits while he was retrograde were positive. There were trines to the planets in Pisces, Saturn and Neptune, and the North Node in Aries, and ultimately in Pisces. And there was a lot of support from the Cancer and the Leo part of the chart in this towards stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart and moving towards creating a future in the Aries part of the chart. But somewhere as part of this action, the Mars-Pluto opposition was also a presence, and Pluto's transformation in Aquarius, for some of you, may be tied to everything that is developing with the stabilization of the Pisces part of the chart and moving forward in the Aries part of the chart. It could be distinct things happening in these 3 parts of the chart, but because they're all happening concurrently, the narrative something is ending in the Aquarius part of the chart, it prompts acceleration towards stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart and frees you to move towards whatever it is that the North Node eclipses in Aries have been trying to move you towards in the Aries part of the chart, and release what you've needed to with the South Node eclipses in the Libra part of the chart. That kind of narrative. So Mars and Pluto oppose each other on April the 26th. Mars moves ahead, and then Pluto goes retrograde. So it's a little bit as if Mars and Pluto conjuncted on February 14th of 2024. Mars and Pluto had 3 oppositions culminating in the oppositions on April the 26th, 2025. And Pluto decided, well, it didn't decide, it was written that after that opposition, Pluto would reverse and rework some of the degrees it has been going over since November of last year. Now, he's not going to go that far back, but it's like the opposition happened. Pluto was like, as I said, Pluto tends to move forward, retrograde, move forward, retrograde. It is a painstaking, it's like a tractor in a field where it's doing something and then has to go back and do something and do something and do something, do something. It's like a de-weeding tractor. I don't know. It has this kind of painstaking transformation, but every inch earned is every inch gained towards this transformation. It's an intensely complete and thorough process. And as I like to say, Pluto always wins, no matter which planet is conjuncting it or aspecting it. So Pluto then decides to retrograde on May the 4th. You might be wondering, where is this going? And I'm going to tell you. And then goes direct on October the 14th. Now, what is so striking and stunning and intriguing, and not entirely unexpected, because remember that the Sun and Mercury and Venus move fairly close together. However, at any given time, they can be in different houses. You know, the Sun can be in Aquarius while Mercury is still in Capricorn and Venus is still in Sagittarius. I mean, they can be that far apart, but they're relatively close together. And for a few months, Mars can be in the mix, and then Mars separates from the personal planets. When we get to January of 2026, all these planets, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Pluto, are just on top of each other. Now, in the sign of Capricorn, the Sun, Venus, there are two sets of conjunctions, one in the sign of Capricorn and one in the sign of Aquarius. The ones in the sign of Capricorn are the conjunctions with Mars. So the Sun and Venus conjunct, Venus and Mars conjunct, and the Sun and Mars conjunct on Jan 6th, 7th, and 9th in Capricorn. I told you, they're so close. But then, and then Mercury and Mars conjunct on Jan the 18th. But then starting Jan the 19th till the end of January is just this Jan 19th, Venus, Pluto. Jan 21st, Sun, Mercury. Jan 22nd, Mercury, Pluto. Jan 23rd, Sun, Pluto. Jan 27th, Mars, Pluto. Jan 29th, Mercury, Venus. And then finally, 2 weeks after all this mayhem, on February 16th, 17th, we have a new moon in Aquarius. This is in 2026. So whatever, for those of you who are starting to track this Plutonian transformation in the Aquarius part of the chart, Pluto kicked the door open between Jan 20th and Feb 20th of 2024. We had the Mars-Pluto oppositions between, let's just say, September, October of 24 to April the 26th of 25. And with the opposition, whatever this cycle was, remember that the personal planets are going to be meeting up with Pluto and opposing Pluto and meeting up with Pluto and opposing Pluto and meeting up with Pluto and opposing Pluto, all in Aquarius all the way to 2042. And Pluto's going to keep being like, okay, we're this far forward with the transformation. Now we're this far forward with the transformation. We're this far forward. And every time Pluto goes retrograde, it has this kind of, oh, some more weeds we left out. We've got to go back and de-weed those. Now, the experience, as I said, will be different if you have Pluto retrograde in your birth chart or Pluto direct in your birth chart. And it's not unusual to have Pluto retrograde in your birth chart because Pluto is retrograde for, if you want to think of it this way, Pluto's, it's like a 50-50 chance practically that you'll have Pluto retrograde or Pluto direct. But there's this feeling that, yes, I have made it to May the 4th, but I've got to go back and rework an area all the way at least to October 15th. And when Pluto goes direct, the same degrees, and then move a little bit further forward and then go retrograde again next year in 2026 as we head into the spring. So what was it with these Mars-Pluto oppositions that made Pluto go, got to revisit this transformation. Got to go back and rework something. Now, if you have Pluto retrograde in your birth chart, it's during the retrogrades that the transformation may occur, and you may feel that when Pluto is direct, sort of the rework is happening. Then if you have Pluto direct in your birth chart, you may feel like, oh, there's a need to go over things. It may feel like a lot of the transformation occurs when Pluto is direct, but the transformation has to be assimilated, reviewed, attended to, reacted to, responded to, dealt with when Pluto is retrograde. And when planets conjunct, it's a little bit like a new moon, and then when they conjunct and then they oppose, it's like a full moon, and then they conjunct again. Feb 14th of last year, 2024, was a conjunction that is culminated in Mars and Pluto opposing each other on April the 26th. And now Mars is going to start to move towards conjuncting Pluto. It's just that when he conjuncts Pluto on Jan 27th of next year, between Jan the 19th and Jan the 29th, between the Sun, Venus, Mercury, Mars, and Pluto, for all intents and purposes, they're practically on top. They're practically on at the same degree. So it isn't even the Sun and Pluto conjunct on Jan the 20th, and then Mercury and Pluto conjunct on February the 5th, and Mars and Pluto conjunct on February the 14th, and Venus and Pluto conjunct on February the 17th, as it was in 2024, which was close enough. This year, I'm sorry, in 2026, it's Jan 19th, Venus Pluto. Jan 22nd, Mercury Pluto. Jan 23rd, Sun Pluto. Jan 27th, Mars Pluto. Bam, 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 bam. And at around that time, we're going to have to ask the question, what is this next ignition that is going to be occurring with this Plutonian transformation? And of course, this time around, I just mentioned the Pluto conjunctions. As I said, Jan 21st, the Sun and Mercury conjunct. Jan 29th, Mercury and Venus conjunct. On Jan the 18th, in Capricorn, Mercury and Mars conjunct. So all the personal planets and Pluto are at a roundtable conference. And when it comes to the outer planets, it's the outer planets that instruct, download to the personal planets. Here's where we're at. Here's what we've transformed. Here's the direction we need to go in. So take your archetypal energies and move forward in that direction. I just wanted to mention this timeline and this outline to you. I mean, it's pretty isolated. Some of you may be like, okay, this video is way too specific and way too esoteric, but Pluto is in his first few years of tearing up, ripping away, trying to remove, trying to loosen bonds. Remember, with Pluto, I say, if we are really attached to something, or somebody else is really attached to keeping us in a certain place, and Pluto determines that it isn't right for us, Pluto will try to loosen those bonds. And we may instinctively know and feel like, you know what, I don't think that this is supposed to be part of my future. I think my future ideally should look like this. And Pluto may be like, well, if you know it, then why don't you loosen your grip on this? And what happened between Jan 20th and Feb 20th, 24 could give you a clue of what this Plutonian transformation is supposed to be like based on where Aquarius sits in your birth chart. And you're going to have to try and make sense of, I'm not talking to each of you individually, you're going to have to try and make sense of what these Mars-Pluto oppositions in October, November, let me see if I have the dates for the Mars-Pluto oppositions. Am I being a glutton for punishment to kind of put you through this? No, I've got them. All right. Mars-Pluto opposed November 3rd of 2024, Jan 3rd of 2025, and April 26th of 2025. November 3rd of 24, Jan 3rd of 25, April 26th of 25. And after the April 26th opposition, Pluto was like, all right, let's go back and revisit this. And by the time we get to next January, we're going to be ready to meet up again for the next trip around the chart with Plutonian instructions that are meant to support Pluto's transformation of the Aquarius part of the chart. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. I think I've shared what I needed to share, because now I'm going to run the risk of repeating myself over and over and over again. Housekeeping. There are 3 ways to engage with me. The free content I put out on this website, on this channel. Memberships, monthly memberships are $6.99 a month. I put sign-specific content there. The new moon in Taurus videos for each rising sign are on there. Starting next week, I'm going to start doing the full moon in Scorpio videos. There's by now a fair amount of sign-specific content going back to, the Pisces parts of the chart with the new moon in Pisces, the new moon solar eclipse in Aries that is still affecting us all the way till the end of the first week of June at least. The Virgo full moon lunar eclipses that are going to continue till February 27th. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. And the third way to engage with me is to get a personal reading with me. My email address is in the description box below. There are a couple of different options. If you email me there, I'll send you information about them, and you can determine which options might work for you. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. And when you subscribe, there's a bell icon next to the subscribe button. When you subscribe, it'll give you the option to click the wiggly bell on top. Click that and you'll be notified whenever I do new videos. You can contribute to the channel by using the thanks button underneath this video. Donating to the information on donating is in the description box below. I received a donation to thank you to the people who are donating. I am really grateful for that. It's always such a surprise because it just kind of comes through. That was lovely this earlier today. I think you know who you are. And you can contribute to this channel for free by liking this video, commenting on it. If you're so inclined, likes and comments give the video greater circulation on YouTube, is my understanding. And yeah, I'm going to move towards doing the weekly overview, and then I'm going to move towards much earlier than normal, do the full moon in Scorpio video, so that you have some time to work towards it. But more importantly, doing it early then gives me time to do the sign-specific content for the membership part of the chart while I'm putting out general videos as well. Okay? Thank you for your patience and for your support, and I hope you're enjoying this content. Not every video is the same, right? So we have weekly overviews. We have stuff like this that is much more specific. Take from it what resonates and try and make sense of it as best you can. You know, this video is going to be something that might be, I mean, if you don't know your chart and those dates and windows that I gave you resonate, then that could be very interesting to think about. But it'll be that much more interesting if you do know your chart and you know the house that Aquarius sits in. And what Plutonian transformation could be occurring there, and where it is that Pluto may be trying to prepare you to move towards. Okay, more to follow. Thank you. Take care.